Hi friends, and welcome back to Happily Home Cooking. I've been in the mood to do some baking lately, and so today I'm making some yummy Cran-Bran muffins with a streusel topping. This came about because I found myself with a box of some Kellogg's All Bran cereal, which I had bought for another recipe, and it's not something that we usually eat by the bowl as cereal, so I was looking for some recipes to use it up. Today's recipe that I'm using is not an original recipe of mine. It is one that I found on Midwest Living's website, and I will put a link to that recipe in the description below so you can go check it out. But today I'm going to show you just how easy these muffins are to make. I chose this recipe not only because it's using the All Bran cereal, but it also uses some other ingredients that I almost always have on hand, some dried cranberries and pecans. I get both of these in big bags from Costco, so I'm always looking for ways to use them as well. So make sure you're subscribed to our channel, turn on those notifications, and then stick around and we're going to make some of these delicious Cran-Bran muffins with a yummy streusel topping. So for our muffin batter, we are going to use one large bowl. We'll start with 1 egg, a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, 1 cup of milk, and 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. And we'll just use a whisk to combine those all together really well. You could of course do this in your electric mixer as well if you prefer, but sometimes I just like the simplicity of a simple bowl and whisk, especially for a recipe like this that comes together so quickly. So now we'll just add in the rest of our dry ingredients, starting with 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. Sometimes I'm in the mood to be real precise and level these off, but today I'm just going with the simple shake it until it looks level method. Either way, they turn out fine. Now we'll add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and I am adding a 1/4 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. The original recipe calls for using either apple pie spice or ground cinnamon or nutmeg. This pumpkin pie spice has the cinnamon and nutmeg along with some ginger and allspice, so this is what I'm using, but you can use whatever spice blend you have on hand or prefer. And now we'll just give this all a gentle mixy mix just to incorporate those dry ingredients. There's something about mixing this by hand that I just find kind of relaxing. What about you? What do you think? Do you like mixing things by hand or do you always use the mixer? I'm kind of in between, depends on my mood that day. But today is definitely an old-fashioned mix it by hand day. So now come our add-ins. We're using 1 cup of our All Bran cereal, a 1/3 cup of dried cranberries, and then we're also going to add a 1/3 cup of pecans. We're just going to give them a quick little chop. You can make your pieces as big or as small as you like. We'll toss those in with everything else here. And once again, a little mixeroo just to combine everything. Now I was being kind of stubborn today and didn't want to dirty up another spoon, so I continue using my whisk, but you can see that if you do that, sometimes your little chunks might get stuck into your whisk, so you gotta tap those out and mix them back in. So I would recommend maybe using a spatula for this if you like. But again, if you're stubborn like me, you can just use your whisk, whatever works for you. So now it's time to fill our muffin tins. I have lined our muffin cups with paper liners, and I like to use a cookie scoop to portion out our muffin batter. I find it to be generally just a little bit easier than a couple spoons, maybe a little less messy, but it's really not necessary. You can scoop this in however you like. Now what I found as I went today is that I slightly overfilled my muffin cups as I went. You can see I'm using a pretty full scoop. and I ended up not having quite enough batter. I ended up with about 10.5 muffins instead of our 12. So you could just bake those as is, but I'm going to be a little particular and try to rescue that 12th muffin. I'm just going to take a little bit from each of the other cups to fill up that 12th muffin cup. But you could just skip this part and totally just bake 11 muffins. They'll just be a little bit bigger, and again, it comes out fine. So once you're done with that, the last thing we're going to do is make our streusel topping. We'll start with 1/3 cup of packed brown sugar, 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and another 1/4 teaspoon of our pumpkin pie spice or whatever spice you choose to add to your muffins. And we are going to mix those together real quick with a fork, just kind of breaking up that brown sugar and mixing it into the flour, trying to distribute that spice around too. Now, last thing we need to add to our streusel topping is 2 tablespoons of cold butter. And we need to break this down into our flour and brown sugar mixture. So there's several different ways you can do this. Ideally, you would use a pastry cutter if you have one. I did not have one at the time of filming this video, so I am using 2 knives. You can just kind of crisscross scissor them to break up that butter. Another option you could do is just taking a fork to kind of smash it in and breaking that down to little chunks, just mixing it into the flour as you go. This is a little bit tedious though, so what I would really recommend if I had thought ahead is throw this all into a food processor if you have one and give it a few pulses, and that'll break it down real nicely. That would be the easiest go-to way. I even went to using my hand to break it down at the very end. So this just kind of shows you that no matter what technique you do, it's gonna work out. So now we will just sprinkle all of our streusel topping all over the tops of our muffins. Don't be shy to pile that on. The streusel topping is one of the best parts of any muffin. And now these are ready to bake. We'll bake them at 400 degrees for 15 to 18 minutes, or until that streusel topping is nice and golden brown and a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. You can let these cool down completely on a wire rack, but definitely dig into these while they are still warm. That is when they are their absolute best. That crumble topping, the warm smell of our pumpkin pie spice. These are so delicious. Plus, you're getting all that extra fiber from your All Bran cereal that nobody will even know is in there. These are so yummy. I hope you enjoyed baking these yummy and pretty darn healthy muffins with me today. Even on days when things are a little bit wacky and we don't do everything perfectly, muffins like this will still come together and be super duper delicious. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel to be notified when we upload more of our family's favorite recipes. Thanks so much for joining me today, and happy home cooking!